Hello and welcome to this very special chat with someone who has been in the sports industry for quite a long time. We are building up to the Euro 2024, and who is better than to talk about it than Mr. Mihir Bose, someone who has been in the media, sports media industry for quite a long time, has been with the BBC, the Sunday Times, the Financial Times, and has written so many books. So, sir, welcome to RevSportz. And why don't you start with your latest work?
My latest work is my memoir, which is called Thank You, Mr. Crombie Lessons in Guilt and Gratitude to the British. I'm a Midnight's child, born a few months before India won independence. The joke in my family, once the British knew I was born, they left the country. But anyway, it was about growing up in India and then coming here and becoming a journalist. As you said, I was the BBC's first sports editor, and what happened to me, and meeting people like Boria and so on, writing histories of Indian cricket and football and so on, which I've had the privilege of writing, and I've managed to fool enough people into thinking I know something about sport. Maybe I'll be found out today, but we'll see.
Okay, sir. So now, as we are talking about the Euro, this is the 17th edition of the tournament. So how do you look into this edition? And I'm sure you have quite fond memories of the tournament in your sporting journalist career.
Yes, and I think this is one of the most important tournaments. I'll tell you why. Because it goes beyond the tournament, it goes into politics. It's being held in Germany. I was
Yeah,
there in Germany for the 2006 World Cup, and the Germans said this was the first united Germany after the World War, and they used it for their political purpose. But in Europe, as the recent elections have shown, there has
yeah,
been a growth of the right wing, and I think a lot of people who don't really follow football are hoping that the European tournament will bring Europe together. Through football, people will express themselves. For instance, Scotland have qualified. They haven't qualified
yeah,
for a long time. They've never come out of the group stage.
yeah,
England, the country that invented football, as we all know, haven't won a tournament since 1966. So they
yeah.
are hoping. They think they have a very great side. I'm not so sure about that. I still rate the Germans. Now, the Germans have fallen behind, as we know, and the Italians also are struggling a bit. So actually, it's very difficult to predict the winner. But I think it's and what has also happened because of the since the fall of the wall and the expansion of the number of teams in the Euros, teams like Serbia are coming in. England are
Yeah.
facing Serbia, and if you read the English press, they're a bit worried about Serbia. So if you like, the complexity of Europe is coming out of this tournament, and that will show how much the Europeans have gone. Remember, the World Cup is in the hands of Argentina, but the European organizers of Europe feel
Yeah,
very proud that as far as the business of the World Cup is concerned, it's in
yeah.
Europe's hand. Europe is a bit like India is in cricket. India may or may not win the World Cup, but India runs world cricket. So Europe runs world football.
Yeah, so in that context, this tournament becomes a commercially very important in terms of the sport and the whole continent of Europe. So, with as you mentioned about Argentina, in 1 week's time from the Euro, the Copa is also about to start, and we have been doing this debate since last 15, 17 years, Messi versus Ronaldo, and might be Messi's last Copa and Ronaldo's last Euro. So, will that be an added boost to this commercial aspect of this tournament, as in your opinion?
Absolutely. And Messi, after all, is the footballer of the world, the Virat Kohli, if I may say so, of the football world. It's a good comparison. I don't know what Virat Kohli, whether he used the left or the right legs to score his goals, but I don't know. And I don't know what Messi's cover drive is like. So, we'll leave that for other people to judge. But the point is, what is interesting about this is Ronaldo actually is not much loved in Europe. He's seen as this sort of, this figure who's got his nose in the air. He looks like, or he pretends to be God, and so on. And I think the person probably who is quite liked in Europe is actually the England centre forward Harry Kane, who's gone to
Yeah,
Bayern Munich. Searching for a trophy. He didn't win one with my favorite club, Tottenham Hotspur. He didn't win one with Bayern. And I think it'll remains to be seen whether he can win one with England. And I think Kane lifting the trophy will be a much more powerful symbol than Ronaldo, because Ronaldo is not much liked, and the Portuguese team are not considered to be a cohesive unit in the same way that France may, France may. They lost to Argentina, but France have good players, and maybe this is seen as France's last swan song of the team of Didier Deschamps to win the Euros before probably he gives up the job.
Okay. Sir, as you are from England, you are staying in England. I want to ask you, how is the mood building up to the Euro? Because if you see England, they, as you mentioned, they have not won a major trophy since the 1966 World Cup. Last year, Europe, they were in the finals but lost to Italy. So how is the mood this time?
The mood is that if Gareth Southgate does not win, then he will not remain as England manager. We are going through an election in England at the moment, and the quarterfinals come just before the country goes to the polls. And there's been a lot of joke that if England can't even make the quarterfinals, then Rishi Sunak, who doesn't have much of a chance of winning, will have no chance of winning. He probably will hardly get any votes, but the country will get, the country is bored with politics. The country will get hooked on to the Euros. Also, the Scottish have qualified for a major championship after a
Yeah.
long time. So lots of Scottish fans are there in Munich tonight, watching Germany and so on. And the Scots always travel with hope, and then they come back with nothing. So we'll have to see if they come back with something or the other. But so there is, if you like, from the British Isles, because there is never a team called Britain in football. It's
Yeah.
always the four nations. There is a lot of interest in there. But also, as I said, the smaller nations like Serbia and others, Poland and others, what do they do? That will be very interesting. For instance, Norway hasn't qualified. There is Eric Haaland, one of the great goal scorers in the Premier League, and they didn't get anywhere. So there are some important players missing from the Euros.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even Georgia, they have qualified for the Euro for the very first time. Uh, so, as you mentioned about Southgate, how do you describe his bold movement of leaving out so many stars, as we call it, like Rashfords and all?
Yes, I mean, Rashford hasn't been doing very well. There's a
Yeah,
lot of feeling that his leaving out Grealish and Madison
yeah,
means
yeah.
that England will not be much of an attacking force. There's a lot of question about how the England midfield will work. Jude Bellingham will obviously be a very
Yeah.
important player. Harry Kane knows how to score goals, and there's no question about that. But what the England midfield will be like is a bit difficult to say. There's been a lot of debate about that, and there's a lot of, I mean, English football has been changed by Gareth Southgate. There's no question. There are a lot more black players playing. There's a lot more cohesive unit, both in terms of diversity and how they're playing. But there is a
Hmm.
worry that he has got the midfield wrong, and that also the defense. John Stones is not fully fit, whether he plays or not. There's a worry about defense, and England might score goals, but they might also leak goals. You see, the preliminaries, the friendlies before the Euros were not very
Hmm.
encouraging.
Okay. So, so what is the group of death in your perspective? How do you see those groups?
The Group B will be the
Yeah,
most difficult group because it
yeah.
has Spain, Croatia,
Russia, Italy,
Italy, and
and
okay, you might say the Albanians will not provide much of a contest, but you have three great teams, and Croatia has been a wonderful team. Luka Modric had made them such a great midfield, and they did quite well. I know that they in Qatar, they didn't go anywhere and threatening to win, but they did quite well. And I think that will be the hardest group. I would be very surprised if England don't qualify. I think my dark horse, not for winning the tournament, but for going into the latter stages, could be Hungary. Hungary was a great team in the 50s, changed world
Yes.
football the way they played. Hungary hasn't been around for a long time.
Yeah.
In Britain, they're talking of the Scots not being around. The Scots, with great respect to all my as Scottish friends, the Scots have never done anything on the international stage, whereas Hungary's imprint is great. And the Hungarians, as they played against England, they showed that this could be in that group, Hungary and Germany. Germany is a great unknown. Germany
Yeah,
has fallen down a long way. Gary Lineker's saying was that 11 people kick the ball and Germans always win. So that moment has completely gone. If you recall from what happened in Brazil and so on. But since then, Germany has been struggling, and
yeah,
this is a big tournament for Germany to once again say that when it comes to big tournaments, the Germans know, because Germans have been described as a tournament side. They know how
yeah,
to win tournaments, and we have to find out if they know. In the other groups, I would be very surprised if England and possibly Denmark don't go through. And I would also think France and that group with France, Poland, Netherlands, and Austria. I would be surprised if France don't go through, because they have some very, very good players. They sometimes, I mean, as we saw, they came quite close to winning the World Cup. It wasn't far away, and France have won the World Cup. And I think Didier Deschamps would like to leave the French stage having won the Euros. And of course, it will be a marvelous boost for President Macron, who is struggling in the polls. You see, never underestimate the effect of sport on politics.
yeah. So I would come to that one, but before that, let me ask one question that is a fan's favorite. Will Ronaldo and Portugal go all the distance this time? Because again, that one, after Messi winning the World Cup in Qatar, there is again the debate of who is the
Yeah,
greatest.
yeah.
So that will be a bigger attention for the fans. How far Ronaldo and Portugal will go this time?
Well, Portugal always, if you like, um, uh, um, doesn't in tournament play doesn't fulfill its potential. I remember going to the Euros in Spain all those years ago, and Portugal got to the final, and they lost to Greece of all teams.
Yeah,
Greece were playing the most, ordinary, old, basic football, thump the ball long, hope you hit somebody's head, and it bounces into goal somehow. And Portugal had. Louis Fugue and wonderful players. Ronaldo, of course, was a very young,
yeah,
a teenager. They hadn't quite made the team, and Portugal really had a very good side, and they didn't win. So if you like, so Portugal did win the Euros a few years ago. They did win, but again in that final, Ronaldo didn't do anything. So Ronaldo, unlike, you see, if you look back at the World Cup. Before the
yeah,
World Cup, it was always said that Messi plays well for Barcelona, but he doesn't play well for Argentina. That used to be the big debate in Argentina. With Ronaldo again, he has always played well for his club sides, but he hasn't always translated his club form into his country form. And the feeling has been that Ronaldo is too much of an individual player. For a team to win, you want 11 players who want the team to win. And whether Ronaldo, and with great respect, he's a great player, but whether he has that national feeling in him, I'm prepared to die to help my nation win. I know this in sporting terms we exaggerate things, and we say this is the moment of destiny. But I'm not sure Ronaldo has ever given that impression. But they have again good players, and who knows? They might, I think, well, they'll come through their group, no doubt. That will be a major surprise if they don't. But I think the question then is, how far do they go, and where, if you like, they finish up. But I would expect Portugal to make perhaps the semi-finals. It depends how they finish it, but make semi-finals. I would expect England to be in the semi-finals, and probably if you were asking me to bet at the moment, I would say the last four would be possibly Germany will be there, and I think France would be there.
okay. So England, Portugal, and Germany and France for you. So
Yes.
final two questions. As you mentioned, sports and politics. So could you please uh, explain this edition of the Euro with the modern geopolitics in Europe?
Yes, what is happening in Europe, and this is a great concern to a lot of people, is there has been the growth of what may be called the right, what used to be the far right, but it has morphed into this sort of pseudo right. Well, they pretend they are not far right, but who don't want immigration, who want to, these boat people are coming, they want to throw them out, put them on an island somewhere, things like that. They are making noises, and there is in Germany signs of revival of far right groups who are allied to Nazi values and so on. And in this context, football then becomes a question of and all these groups, particularly from Eastern Europe, have fans known as ultras who are quite
Yeah.
right wing and who bring back memories of what happened in Europe before the war and so on, and what led to the war, Second World War. And I think there is a fear that in the crowd, in as some of these teams play, that element of ultras will come up. England are playing Serbia, and there have been some warnings that the Serbian ultras might do. We all know that English fans, when they travel abroad, are not the most welcome of people to find. You have to sort of take protection because of what they might do. But even more than that, there is fear of what the ultras might do. And if you have a competition where the football takes your mind off the politics, makes you feel you are part of a European community, that would be a good thing. But I remember, I'm going back to 1970 when England were defending the World Cup. They went to Mexico and they lost to Germany after having led in that match. And 4 days later, the general election in Britain took place, and the nation seemed to wake up and threw the Labour Party out of power and brought the Conservatives in. I'm not saying anything like that is going to happen in the elections that are coming in France and England, but nevertheless in Britain. But nevertheless, there is an impact. Sport does have an impact on politics. People
Yeah.
do want, when they see their national team win or do well, they feel a sense of pride. And at the moment, a lot of people in Europe don't feel a sense of pride. They feel they've been taken over by foreigners. Too many of these immigrants are coming. The boat people is a big problem in many countries. And if Ronaldo's magic, or if Germany can produce some magic, or Harry Kane can produce some magic, maybe that'll take people's mind off it.
Okay. So as you mentioned about the ultras, could you please give us any anecdote that you have experienced over your course of journalism career covering the Euros? Any such stories?
Yes, I saw that in 2006 World Cup, where we had Eastern European teams come. When they were playing, you saw their fans marching to the ground, and they would be carrying banners, which were banners that were carried in the Second World War. They would have Nazi symbols and things like that, and they would be shouting slogans, which were, if you like, borrowed from that era. And as you saw them marching, it was like seeing a recreation of the pictures one had seen at the time, in the history books and so on, of what people were like. So that there is an element of that very much in the ultras. And of course, these ultras inside the stadiums can get very, very demonstrative, let off, flares and things like that. So you don't know how they will behave. And some of them, are very eager to what they try and conquer space. You see, they try and they have a certain space allocated to them. They try and
Yeah.
grab the space of the opposing fans and try and pick a fight and assert that this is their territory, this is their land, and they will fight for it. So as the players are playing and fighting the battle of football with the ball, they are fighting a different war on the stand, which can be quite messy at times. And one
Okay.
must not forget that there is another factor here. In European football, there is still a great deal of racism. Black players have experienced racism. They've heard of taunts and things like that. England, for instance, have a number of black players. So it'll be interesting to see how the fans, when they meet Eastern European teams or other teams, not just Eastern Europeans, how the fans of those teams behave towards England.
Okay, yeah, we have seen such cases in the under 17 World Cup also, and even in Premier League when Anelka, Nicolas Anelka, if I'm not wrong, he did a Nazi salute playing for Chelsea against West Bromwich Albion, and he was banned from that. So these things come up along with sports. So my final question before we end, that is the Copa America is also about to start in a couple of in a couple of weeks. So this has again been a debate, which is a better tournament, the Euro or the Copa. Your final thoughts on that before we end, sir?
Well, I mean, with the Copa America, the question always is, um, now in recent years, when will Brazil revive? What has happened to Brazil? I was brought up on Pelé and people like that, in Falcao and people like that, the great Brazilian teams, and the decline of Brazil has meant that while Messi and Argentina kept the flag flying and finally won the World Cup, Messi finally got a World Cup a trophy. But remember, in the run up to that World Cup, Argentina looked like they were going to be eliminated. They had a very rocky time before they got to the final and won. The question is, can Brazil revive? And I think until Brazil emerges again, because
Yeah,
really, Brazil and Argentina are the two great teams
yeah,
of South America. And if we don't get Brazil again, I think world football is missing out on something. It is missing out on that flair, that brilliance, that innovation, that magic that you need. But the other thing is, and one must not underestimate this nowadays, because most of the international players play in Europe.
yeah.
Copa America is no longer a surprise. You're not going to see a player you haven't seen before. You see a player who said, yes, I saw him play at Liverpool, and maybe he played better at Liverpool than he's playing. So there is no element of surprise anymore in these tournaments.
Absolutely. So it was great time. We spent 20 minutes talking about football, and it was a fantastic chat. So thank you so much, sir, for joining, and we hope to join again soon. Thank you so much.
I thank